The third Guardians of the Galaxy is not only a long-awaited farewell to this disparate but insanely fun gang, but also the last Marvel film by the director and screenwriter James Gunn, who is now in charge of restarting the DC universe. Let's see how the final installment of this trilogy turned out. The film consists of two storylines. In one, the Guardians try to get a cure for one of their fatally injured members, who was attacked by Adam Warlock. In the other, we will look into Rocket Raccoon's past in flashbacks. The first storyline is too schematic for my taste, as it essentially relies on getting to point A and stealing item X, then going to location B where you knock out person Z, and so on. Rocket's backstory is much more interesting, though not particularly surprising in terms of the hints we have received in previous installments. The strongest part of the film is in its final act, where these two storylines come together and culminate in a very pleasant ending to the party's journey, where even the sixth main character outshines any of the Eternals with charisma. We don't get too many plot surprises here, but it's still above the Marvel standard, especially compared to the most of the Phase 4 films. However, in this regard, the third Guardian still falls behind Infinity War or the second Captain America. The main asset of Gunn's screenplay has always been funny dialogues, charismatic characters, and strong emotions. James Gunn proves once again that he is extremely confident in this area, just like Tom Cruise on any vehicle on the ground or several dozen meters above it. Gunn can make viewers laugh in the middle of a serious scene and then make them cry immediately afterwards, all without it feeling cheesy or forced. Hello, Love and Thunder. Phew. In this regard, Gunn can certainly shake hands with Martin McDonagh, so have your diaphragm and tissues ready for the movie. You will need them. The main character of the third installment is Rocket Raccoon, who stayed mostly behind the curtain in the past. He is here connected to some of the most powerful emotional moments in the film. Additionally, Peter Quill tries to get back together with Gamora. Events are quite directly related to Infinity War and Endgame, where the Guardians played a significant role. For the right movie experience, it's not enough to have seen only the previous two parts. All other characters play a second fiddle, but you will never feel like they are not part of the orchestra. They all get a decently concluded character arcs by the comic book adaptation standards. Yes, even Kraglin. You don't know who is Kraglin? Really? Are you even a fan of Marvel and these movies? What you doing here? On the opposite side, the Guardians fight the High Evolutionary played by Shukuru Iwuchi, whom you may already know from Gunn's Peacemaker. He can be quite scary here, but it's a bit of a shame that he spends more than half of his screen time screaming. How many grey villains can you think of who just scream at everyone around them? I thought so. He simply can't compare to Kurt Russell from Volume 2. High Evolutionary subordinates, Adam Warlock played by Will Poulter and Elizabeth Debicki as Ayesha, also seem a bit underused. They have some comedic moments, but the film could easily go without them. On the other hand, the film has some sympathetic cameos from sci-fi fans' favorite Nathan Fillion and Borat's Maria Bakalova, who voiced the talented Doc Cosmo for the second time after a Christmas special. Another element that make 150-minute runtime fly by is the imaginative visual style. Cinematographer Henry Braham, who previously worked with Gunn on the second Guardians and Suicide Squad, collaborates well with the set designers, costumers, and especially those who conceive the designs for the various aliens. Since Gunn doesn't rely heavily on CGI in this aspect, everything feels much more vivid and organic, and you will truly believe that you are on alien basis. Kudos to that. I should note that in a few scenes Gunn reveals his horror roots, having written the script for Snyder's Dawn of the Dead or directed Slither. Some images here are really not suitable for very young children. On the other hand, you will find much scarier things lurking in the corners of teenage internet influencers. Apart from the schematic story, the soundtrack is, surprisingly, the biggest drawback of the latest Guardians. Yes, Gunn once again uses familiar tunes from the 70s to newer stuff like Florence and the Machine, but he doesn't intertwine them with the plot as tightly as he did with Volume 2 or especially the first Guardians. He only succeeds in doing so with Radiohead's opening scene. Elsewhere, it felt like a famous song was chosen just because it was expected and it didn't fit very well. Gunn wasn't able to live up to the two of the best film soundtracks of the last 2 decades, but it's not a disappointment either. You just probably won't listen to the soundtrack on repeat like you did with two previous installments. Overall, the third Guardian successfully concludes one of the best Marvel trilogies. You will have a great time and maybe shed a tear or two. However, they slightly lag behind the more original previous installments and thus receive 7 points out of 10. Compared to most of the Marvel Phase 4 and 5 films, the third Guardians are still Olympian effort. We will see how Marvel fares after losing one of its most talented creators. On the other hand, if you are not fans of light fantasy or Marvel in general, deduct several points from the rating and wait 6 months for the second part of June. The film has two post-credit scenes. The first one at the beginning being very important for the future of Guardians of the Galaxy. You can easily do without the second one at the end of the credits. Strength, funny script, charismatic characters, alien world design. Weaknesses, not very original script, soundtrack.